He threw her out like trash after cheating with her best friend. If that were you standing there with nothing but your pride, what would you do? That question has followed this story wherever it's told. It was past 10 p.m. on Adila Odeku Street, Victoria Island. The kind of Lagos night that never truly rests. Cars crawling, generators humming, lights flickering behind tinted glass. Rain hung in the air, thin but persistent, clinging to skin and clothes like it refused to let go. Funke Ajayi stood outside. A black iron gate, gripping 2 suitcases she hadn't packed herself. One wheel was broken, the other dragged loudly against the pavement. Her phone lay cracked at her feet, screen blinking weakly, as if deciding whether to die. Behind the gate stood Funke Ajayi, CEO, media favorite. The man business blogs called self-made. His white shirt was spotless. His wristwatch caught the streetlight. His face showed no strain. "We're done," he said calmly. Too calmly, "You should leave now." 11 years ended in one sentence. Funk tried to speak, but her throat locked. Memories rushed in late nights, balancing accounts, skipped meals. Quiet prayers whispered when his dreams seemed too big for their reality. She had been there for all of it. Then she noticed someone else said, her best friend, standing just behind Kunal, arms folded, eyes fixed on the ground. Not hiding, not apologizing. Yes, this was the same woman who slept in Funk's guest room for months after her divorce. The same woman who once said, "If I lose you, I lose my only real family." Now, silence was all she offered. "Take your things and go," Kunal continued. "I've moved on. You should too. Moved on." Something inside Funk shifted, not loudly, not violently, but permanently. The kind of break that doesn't scream, only settles. Neighbors watched from balconies. Security man pretended to adjust his uniform. Lagos had seen scenes like this before. Kunal stepped closer to the gate. "And don't come back here thinking you own anything." That was when Funk finally looked up. She looked at the house. The cars. The high walls. The life built from nothing. A memory surfaced Kunal years ago, sitting on a bare mattress saying, "If I ever succeed, it's because you believed when nobody else did." She almost laughed. Instead, she picked up her broken phone and straightened her shoulders. "Kunal," she said softly, her voice steady now. "One day, you'll understand what you just did." He smirked. "Is that a threat?" She shook her head. "No, it's a promise to myself." Barefoot, soaked, dragging her suitcases, Funk turned and walked away. Kunal watched her go, certain he had won. He didn't know the truth was already moving. Funk didn't cry that night. That came later. First came shock, then cold, then the long walk to nowhere. She sat under the weak light of a closed pharmacy, rain dripping from her hair onto the concrete, replaying the past like a punishment she couldn't escape. Every sacrifice lined up in her mind, demanding to be acknowledged. Kunal had not always been powerful. There was a time he begged landlords for patience, a time he borrowed suits for interviews, a time his big ideas sounded like noise to people with real money. Funk remembered those days because she had lived inside them with him. She was the one who taught him discipline, the one who organized his chaos into spreadsheets and plans. While he spoke loudly about vision, she worked quietly behind the scenes, fixing mistakes before anyone noticed. When banks refused him loans, Funk found other ways. Not shortcuts, not crimes, just structures, smart ones. She understood numbers, systems, leverage. She handled what Kunal didn't have the patience to learn. He never asked how she did it. He just enjoyed the results. The promotions, the contracts, the sudden respect. Success arrived like a drug, slowly at first. Then all at once. Kunal changed his phone, his friends, his taste. He stopped asking Funk's opinion and started informing her of decisions already made. When she questioned anything, he called it negativity. "You don't understand pressure," he would say. What he meant was, "You don't worship me anymore." Saad noticed the shift early. "You're becoming invisible in your own marriage," she warned Funk during one of their late-night talks. Funk laughed it off. Loyalty made her stubborn. She believed patience could fix anything. That belief cost her. The affair didn't begin with desire. It began with complaints. Connell talked. Saad listened. Too closely. Too often. Late dinners became late nights. Advice became comfort. Comfort became permission. Funk was the last to know. By the time she noticed the distance, Connell was already gone emotionally, mentally, quietly preparing his exit. He had convinced himself he was the victim, that everything he owned, everything he built, belonged to him alone. That night on Adila Odeku Street was not sudden, it was planned. What Connell didn't plan for was Funk's silence afterward. No calls, no begging, no public drama. Instead, she moved into a small serviced apartment in Surler and borrowed a phone. She showed up at work like nothing happened. She paid her bills. She slept lightly, thought deeply. And then she started remembering details Connell never bothered to learn. Names on documents, clauses in contracts, structures she had built quietly, patiently, years before. Each memory landed like a key turning. Connell believed he had erased her. He didn't realize he had only removed the cover. The foundation was still hers. Foundations don't forget. Funk spent the next weeks quietly observing, listening, and calculating. She didn't call Connell. She didn't confront Saad. She watched from the edges, learning how far the betrayal had spread, who was complicit, who only pretended to be friends. Every news story about Connell's growing empire, every social media post flaunting his self-made life, made her pulse steady, not fast. She remembered every contract signed in her name, every account she had quietly structured, every warehouse lease she had handled while Connell took the credit. The city itself seemed to mock him, glittering with his supposed success, while she alone knew the truth. Funk started reaching out to old colleagues, revisiting companies she had helped build from nothing. She pulled files, audited accounts, checked every document Connell had ever used to boast his power. It was not anger that guided her, it was clarity. And clarity is sharper than rage. At night, she would sit by her small balcony, looking at the Victoria Island skyline, imagining how Connell would react if he realized the walls he admired were held up by her. Saad called her once, timid, asking if they could meet. Funk ignored it. Let her friends stew. Let her feel the weight of silence. Meanwhile, Connell moved freely, unaware. He expanded offices, signed more contracts, gave interviews about innovation, ambition, and leadership. People congratulated him. Investors believed in him. He smiled for cameras while Funk worked behind the scenes, ensuring that the empire he boasted about was still legally tied to her. She remembered nights when he complained about too much paperwork and she had stayed awake, sleepless, correcting mistakes, drafting proposals, saving him from failure. Now, she let him take the applause, the attention, the prestige, but she held the strings. In those moments, she allowed herself small smiles. Not vindictive ones, but knowing ones. He was confident. He was arrogant. He believed he had taken everything from her. He had no idea that he was standing on a foundation she had built, controlled, and could dismantle at any moment. And she began to plan not revenge in the traditional sense, not humiliation, but revelation. A reveal that would strike when he least expected it. She started keeping records meticulously, backing up every file, every document, every proof of ownership. Slowly, methodically, she positioned herself to reclaim not just her dignity, but the recognition of her work and the power she had quietly held for over a decade. In every reflection, every ledger, every quiet night in her small apartment, Funk realized something else. Patience was a weapon far sharper than confrontation. Every smile Connell gave in public would be a hollow one. Every handshake he received would carry the weight of what he had never known. He was powerful, but only because she had allowed it. And the day she chose to reveal the truth, he would remember everything he had taken for granted. Saad would remember too. And the city, the very city that had cheered him on, would witness the quiet force of a woman betrayed yet unbroken, a woman who had built an empire silently. While the men and friends around her slept comfortably in the illusion of ownership, weeks turned into months, and Funk moved like a shadow through her old world, unseen, yet fully aware. She attended industry events, networking dinners, casual meets, always politely. Always quietly, but every conversation, every handshake, every smile was a calculation. Connell's world had grown bigger, but so had her knowledge of it. She knew which investors trusted him blindly, which partners relied on his name, and which employees whispered doubts about his competence. She listened more than she spoke, memorizing each detail. Lagos buzzed around her, oblivious to the storm that simmered quietly. Saad occasionally tried to reach her, texts and calls that went unanswered. Each one was a reminder of betrayal, a whisper that her patience was becoming a weapon. Funk had learned that silence could speak louder than confrontation. She watched Connell in interviews, in public events, in social media posts, his smile broad, his confidence unshaken. He believed he had moved on, that she had vanished, that Saad was his new ally in both life and business. But every building he owned, every contract he celebrated, every warehouse he claimed credit, Forche knew it was tied to her. Every structure, every financial move had her fingerprints hidden in plain sight, and she had ensured legal control. It was not arrogance that guided her now, but a measured certainty. Funk remembered her first bank loan for Kuhnel's company, the first time she had risked her name and her credit, believing in him when no one else did. The trust she had placed in him had been shattered in an instant. Yet she did not feel the need for public humiliation. She felt the need for recognition, for the world to understand that power without integrity is fragile. Funk started contacting her legal advisors, preparing documents, ensuring every asset, every account. Every contract was watertight. She double-checked ownership, cross-referenced signatures, verified holdings. She left nothing to chance. Connell, meanwhile, continued to expand, unaware that the empire he flaunted was built on a foundation she controlled. She even began visiting old company sites, inspecting records, reviewing contracts. Every visit reinforcing the truth she held close. She could reclaim everything at any moment. Her nights were sleepless, not from despair, but from strategy. Each day, each observation, each silent smile brought her closer to the moment when she would step out of the shadows. She did not need to act yet. Timing mattered more than action. And she knew when the time came, the revelation would hit hardest because it would be unexpected, precise, undeniable. Funk's mind often wandered to that night on Adilo Odeku Street. The night Connell had thrown her out like trash, standing with Saad by his side. She remembered the mixture of disbelief, betrayal, and quiet rage. That memory fueled her, reminding her that patience is a weapon far sharper than immediate retaliation. And in the city that never slept, she walked, invisible to the crowds, silently preparing for the day when the world would finally see who had truly built Funke Ajayi's empire. The first sign that Connell's world was about to crumble came quietly. An investor called, confused, asking for clarification on contracts he had signed personally. Funk smiled to herself as she answered, not revealing her identity, just confirming details, subtly reminding them that the ownership structure was precise, traceable, undeniable. Connell had always thrived on appearances, on charm, on confidence. He never paused to understand the fine print. The layers of control Funk had woven into every deal, every agreement, every warehouse, every branch office. She moved like a shadow through his empire, unnoticed but omnipresent. Every phone call she took, every email she answered, reinforced the reality. She held the power. Saad had already faded into the background. She realized too late that her loyalty had been misplaced, that the empire she had thought was Connell's was built on Funk's dedication and genius. Funk did not gloat, at least not openly. She smiled quietly, with precision, knowing that the moment of revelation would strike hardest because it would be unexpected, controlled, undeniable. Each day she reviewed records, rechecked legal documents, and ensured every asset was secured under her name or trust. She even contacted accountants she trusted, auditors she had trained years ago, making sure everything was airtight. Meanwhile, Connell expanded recklessly. He signed new deals with uncharacteristic haste, believing momentum alone would secure his reputation. He was visible, confident, public. Funk remained invisible, calm, patient. She remembered the nights she had stayed up correcting mistakes in his presentations, drafting proposals he would deliver without reading, negotiating contracts, while he smiled for cameras, claiming credit. The injustice fueled her strategy rather than anger. One evening, she attended a gala Connell organized to celebrate a major acquisition. The chandeliers reflected off glass walls, the laughter echoed through the hall. The applause wrapped around him like a cloak. He had no idea the foundation of everything he was flaunting was legally hers. Funk stood at the edge of the room, observing, listening, noting faces, understanding allegiances. The excitement, the confidence, the pride in his smile, all of it, would turn to shock soon. She watched him receive congratulations, bask in the attention, unaware of the ticking reality she controlled. That night she walked home alone, reviewing documents on her tablet, cross-referencing each transaction, each title, each company name, ensuring that when the time came, the revelation would be absolute. Funk had thought about confrontation, humiliation, revenge, but she discarded each notion as immature. What mattered was clarity, undeniable truth, and public acknowledgement of what she had built and what he had taken for granted. The betrayal by Saad and Kunal had stung, but it had not broken her. Instead, it had taught her patience, strategy, and the quiet power of observation. By the time Kunal would realize the empire he flaunted was not truly his, it would be too late. Every contract, every warehouse, every asset would already be secured under her authority. And when she finally stepped forward, the city, the investors, and everyone who had cheered Kunal's rise would witness the full measure of betrayal, genius, and quiet resilience. Funk allowed herself one small smile, remembering the night she had been thrown out. Drenched, alone, with nothing but a broken phone and 2 suitcases. That night had felt like an ending, but it had only been the beginning. Now, the world was about to see the real beginning, the one Kunal had never imagined. The one Saad had never anticipated. The one Funk had quietly prepared over months, one meticulous, calculated, unstoppable step at a time. The day Funk chose to reveal the truth was unremarkable to everyone else. A bright Lagos morning, the city buzzing, cars honking, the usual chaos of Victoria Island unfolding as if nothing mattered. Kunal arrived at his office, ready to announce a major expansion deal to investors he had convinced were backing him personally. Confidence radiated from his every move. Cameras flashed. Phones recorded. Investors smiled and nodded. He had no idea that the ground beneath him was no longer his own. Funk entered quietly, dressed in a simple but elegant cream suit. Her hair pulled back, her presence commanding without demanding attention. She walked straight to the table where Kunal was signing papers and giving speeches. And the room fell slightly quieter, sensing the unexpected. Kunal froze for a fraction of a second, then smiled politely. "Funk," he said. "I didn't expect you here." She returned a calm, measured smile. "You shouldn't assume," she said softly. "Some truths are hidden until the right moment." The lead investor, curious, leaned forward. "And what truth is that?" Funk handed him a folder. He opened it, scanning pages, documents, contracts, and legal proofs. Eyes widened. Whispers filled the room. Every asset Kunal had claimed ownership of, every warehouse, every major contract, every branch was legally hers. Every signature, every account, every guarantee, perfectly documented, perfectly secured. Kunal's confident smile faltered. The cameras caught the shift, the subtle tremor in his hand, the disbelief in his eyes. This can't be," he stammered. Funk's voice remained calm. "It is. Every claim you've made, every empire you thought you built alone, was built with my work, my vision, and my legal ownership. You've only taken credit for what you didn't truly own." Saad's face appeared in the background of the room, pale, shrinking into the shadows. She had arrived, hoping to maintain influence, to salvage what she could, but now realized she had been complicit in a lie that Funk had outgrown. Investors murmured, reassessing, checking their files. Kunal tried to protest, but every word was drowned by evidence, facts, legality. He was powerless. Funk turned to the room and, in a measured, unwavering tone, said, "Power is not about appearances. It's about truth, patience, and responsibility. Everything else is a mirage. The room absorbed the words. Some investors nodded, some whispered apologies. Cameras captured every expression. Social media would explode within hours. Connell slumped into his chair, reality hitting him harder than any confrontation could. He had lost not just recognition but the empire he had flaunted, and the respect of everyone who had ever believed in his self-proclaimed genius. Funk did not gloat. She did not laugh. She simply stepped back, her work complete. Her patience had been the weapon, her knowledge the shield, and the timing the strike. She left the office, leaving Connell and Sod behind, exposed and humbled. Later, Funk would use her regained influence to fund women-led ventures, enter young entrepreneurs, and quietly rebuild a legacy beyond the reach of betrayal. She reflected on that night on Adila Odeku Street, barefoot, drenched, broken phone in hand, and realized that moment, painful as it was, had forged her resilience, strategy, and quiet power. The moral was simple yet profound. Betrayal may wound, but patience, intelligence, and unwavering self-belief can turn wounds into triumph. And sometimes, the ultimate revenge is not anger, but timing, clarity, and undeniable truth. Connell never recovered the image of invincibility he once held. Sod disappeared from the industry. Funk thrived at not because she wanted revenge, but because she had never lost sight of what she truly owned: her dignity, her mind, her capacity to endure, and the empire she had always quietly commoned. In the city of Lagos, whispers spread of the woman who had been thrown out like trash, only to quietly reclaim an empire without raising her voice, proving that the strongest victories are those executed with patience, strategy, and unwavering courage. And for Funk, finally, freedom and recognition came not from shouting Oranger, but from knowing that she had never truly lost. She had only been waiting for the right moment,